this meeting, and as always, we begin our meeting. Who has joined us would like to speak?
Diana would like to speak.
If Diane's up, she's muted.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hello. Now we can,
Hi.
yeah.
Okay, good. It's good to see you all. It's been a long time. I just wondered if there was any response to my latest letter. Did you all get it? The update on the emotional health part of the health curriculum? Did you all get that?
When did you send that note?
Well, I sent it 3 different times because there hasn't been meetings, but I sent it again yesterday.
I received it every single time.
Well, good, good. Do you have any response to it? Appreciate it.
I have not received the most recent one, but if it's the same, then I have looked at the other ones. Pat, you want to?
I will make a personal response as myself, because we as a curriculum committee have not discussed this.
Okay.
We haven't been able to meet in person.
Right.
I spent several days last summer going through the book that you gave us with great care, reading it very carefully. And I am just going to say, as an individual, I am not going to support the adoption of this. Pedagogically, it comes at students from the sense of, here, we will have a discussion and eventually I will lead you to these specific answers. That I think is not what either our district or the New York State curriculum is about. It encourages critical thinking. I am not an expert in cultural competence, but I began to wonder fairly early on in the reading how representative this book and this approach was of people from different cultures and different backgrounds, because it seemed to me to be coming from a very specific prism and a very specific matrix. And I will point out that in the over 2 years that you've been bringing this to us, we have, the district has launched a very significant comprehensive K-12 curriculum in social and emotional learning that I think is far more culturally responsive, comprehensive, and applicable to all students than this approach of, here, let's teach this one class at the high school. So I, as a matter of fact, think that while I appreciate your good intentions, this is not something that I would support. It's not really the committee's role to recommend curriculum. We were supposed to review curriculum, but we are not the curricular experts. And no one from the ICSD has come to our committee to say, yes, we want to adopt this. So I am not advocating moving it forward at all.
Okay, I guess since that time, actually, I went to the health teacher, and as I wrote in that letter that you got, I'm using their curriculum now. Can you see this?
Health Smart, is that what it says? Health Smart?
Yeah, yes. And this is what the health curriculum committee, the classes are using now. Actually, there's 6 different topics which are listed in that letter I wrote to you. And this one in particular is almost 100 pages long, just for emotional and mental health, which is really impossible to cover in a 1 semester health course, because there's 6 at least large topics that need to be covered. So that's why I keep advocating for a special course, you know, just like we have special courses 3 years in English and history, because these skills are very difficult to learn. You know, being a therapist and working with many, many people over 30 years takes a lot of time to learn these skills, just like mathematical skills or anything else. So anyways, I'm just presenting this one is, which is the health course being used now. And so I'm sorry that, Pat was, I guess, thinking I was talking about the other one at this point. So I'm hearing you, and actually the one that you responded to, Patricia, is used in the New York City schools, at least 16 of them, which is very cross-cultural.
I'm reading the one that I read, the one that you bought for us and have been advocating tirelessly for. And if something else is already being used in the schools, then that's gone through our administration and our teachers. And I'm not advocating for any changes.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to
So,
try to say
Nicole,
this
can I
with,
just,
yeah.
oh, I'm sorry, Pat, go ahead, finish your thought.
I was just, no, I won't. I don't think there's a kind way to say it, so I won't.
All right, Nicole, do you have any responses?
So are you saying, Pat, that curriculum that you were responding to it's been used in New York City and in several schools there where there's many
So
races?
I am trying to understand why you spent 2 years lobbying us for one curriculum, and now you're trying to lobby us for an entirely different curriculum. I
Because
will say this. If you are advocating to be a teacher of healthy emotional relationships, you are not setting a good example. You have been trying to coerce various people. You brought us a letter from the mayor saying that we should adopt this. I understand that at one point you called the mother of a district administrator to find out where she was. These are crossing very serious boundaries between the way I believe healthy relationships should work. And
I don't know what you're referring to.
all I can say is and this will be the last thing that I say about this, I am not advocating that you should be leading healthy relationship curriculums in our district.
Well,
Okay, can we put a pin in this, Diana, right now? I need to hear from our other committee members so we can move the meeting forward. And I had asked Nicole if she had anything to add before I give my 2 cents.
My only follow-up thoughts or questions would be for Lily or Dr. Brown to give us an update regarding what we're offering high school students, middle school students around building healthy relationships as we think about, sorry, I'm burning dinner. Hold that.
Well, Nicole has to go save her dinner. So in the few seconds she's gone, let me just, I think I know where she was going. Diana, let me say this to you from my perspective. I like what you said about a course being needed that's taken as seriously as an academic subject, right? And we know we have those subjects. We even have PE, which is, we made the decision as a community and as a society that our children's physical health is so important that we're going to elevate that to an actual class or series of classes. We have not made the decision yet, as far as I know, and our executives can inform us. New York State has not yet made the decision that what you are hypothesizing has risen to that level. And I don't want to say level of importance, because what we have decided as a district and what other districts have decided is that anything we push now onto kids almost has to have significant youth input. We're going to hear about that tonight if you listen to the rest of the meeting. So to Pat's point, we're much less amenable now to pushing things on our young people. We're in effect trying to work with them to bubble up the things that they think they need. That's my first comment. My second comment is, I remember back in the days before I joined the school board, Diana, when we were trying to infuse some semblance of cultural responsibility throughout the district. And the way we did that eventually was determined by our leadership to be a mistake. And the way we tried to do that is this idea of having a magic wizard on a mountain, and all people come to them. to be to be bestowed upon the gift of racial equity or cultural responsiveness, right? Now we have taken the approach to diffuse that throughout everything, every building, every system, trying to do professional development for every teacher, every professional. We're looking at all of our books to try. So it's a systemic approach as opposed to the single professor teaching this thing and lecturing to young people. Now, I don't know what all has to take place to make this shift, right? To where you want to go. But the singleton model is just not where we're at. It's not where the state's at. It's not where we're at. If New York City is implementing that book in 16 schools, we know how many schools there are in the city. That's actually not a very good sample size to make us say that this is a positive thing. And the last thing I'll say before I stop, and then you will get to respond, and then we'll have to move on, unfortunately, is actually I'm going to take Pat's advice and I'm going to stop right there because those are some pretty significant things I laid out. So let's hear from you. We'll let Nicole finish her statement and then we will move on.
Okay, I guess, it's, back in 2017, when I came into the classes, the Avid teachers were very much on board for doing this. And actually there was a petition signed by many students in James Slattery class and a couple other classes where the students wanted this course. So from the very beginning, it's been about the students wanting it. So that's number one. I guess number two is that Pat, I have no idea about the phone call she's referring to. I have no idea what that's about. Maybe she ought to email me about that because I have no idea. So anyways, there has been the teachers wanting it and the students, it's been from the students from the very beginning. So that's why I'm so much advocating for it. And the prevention, the prevention. And actually, if I can just add one more thing, the Surgeon General on February 12th was coming before the Senate committee and talking about how much that youth mental health has to be addressed for prevention, and that there's 11 years between the problem and between knowing the problem and getting to the treatment, and that there's 51% increase in suicidal teens in 2021. And this is all before the Senate committee. And as far as the state is concerned, I've gone to Albany, or called Albany, I should say, many times. And there is a actual bill on the floor as of 2017 for having this in the schools. It is not implemented because it's now only open to having the schools do it because they want it. Even Barbara Lifton told me it would take 20 years to legislate it. So that's why I'm on a personal level with you folks. And I went to the health class so that I could actually be integrated with what you want to do at the high school.
Thank you. All very helpful. Nicole, do you want to finish what you were going to say to us?
My thoughts were just wanting to know what we're offering students currently, and also just thinking about public comment. And when our student reps report back to us, they have been asking for workshops, trainings regarding consent. And I think this ties definitely into healthy relationships, thinking about a lot of the fights that were going on in the beginning of the year. It's coming back to school and all the things that they're navigating. I think that it is worthwhile looking into and hearing from our teachers and students. Diana saying that this has been requested by teachers and students. So if our admin would be able to reach out to our health teachers to see what the needs are, and we can circle back.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nicole. So what I suggest now, Tricia, is we let the next public speaker speak, and then our team can respond to either or both comments after that. Thanks. Thanks, Diana.
Eldred, I don't see anyone else in the chat or raised hand.
Oh, I thought Corinne, I thought she was signed up. Do I have her name wrong? Anyway, it's probably, let's move on then. So Dr. Brown, Lily, I don't see Mary, Oh, Mary is with us. She's just not visible. Help us split this hair between Nicole's and Diana's statements that this is necessary and has been requested, and Pat and my comments that doesn't seem to be the way that we have gone about the business of infusing certain elements of social emotional learning throughout the district now, or cultural responsiveness. You know, we have a very diffuse approach as opposed to a singleton. Help us walk through that.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all. And Nicole, I think that's an excellent question around what's already happening and what are health teachers saying and what are students saying now that they like to see. So one of the things that we've been working on is I'm going to share a couple of prongs. We've been, albeit this is really focused on elementary, we've been rewriting the elementary health curriculum. It's relatively outdated, and we're really focusing on a number of areas, everything around gender identity and expression, all the way to consent and online relationships and how to manage those. So there's 6 big areas that we're really focusing on. We're working closely with the Advocacy Center for that rewrite. And Jess Jordan went out on maternity leave a little bit before I did. And then we are meeting again. We just got back, both of us, and we're restarting it and are going to continue that rewrite into the summer and do some training in the summer and then throughout the school year. So that's at elementary in terms of the health curriculum rewrite. Now, Jess Jordan and Angela Knight are amazing middle school health teachers, have been working together and definitely doing a lot of rewriting as well. Again, we're sort of taking the approach where we're starting younger and then going up in terms of the really specific rewrite, just being super honest about that. And I'm happy to take a look and really dive in more in the high school and take a look at what's happening in the high school health classes and report back maybe at another curriculum committee meeting, because I'm frankly less familiar with it. I'm more familiar with really K through 8, especially because that's where Aaron's Law is focused on. And Aaron's Law was passed in 2019, like right before the pandemic hit, which requires us to have particular curriculum around sexual abuse prevention and response. So that's that part. And then the other part that I'll share is Mary and I meet regularly with students and with folks from the Advocacy Center, Lynn and Katrina, and folks from Teen Council, Kara from Planned Parenthood. And so we meet regularly in order to, and with board reps. So Grace is one of the kiddos that we meet with, to plan and implement different programs, posters, campaigns, training for adults, training for kids, in order to promote a safe and healthy experience at the high school specifically. So for example, we worked on the sexual harassment and assault reporting form and that website that we put together. We've been working on trainings for students around LGBTQIA+ supports and one for staff. We've run trainings for administrators, counselors, and social workers at the high school around sexual violence prevention and response as well. And those have all happened this year. So there's definitely more to do, a lot more to do, but that's a little bit of an update.
I'll add one. I've been on phone and hearing the whole conversation, but I thank you everyone for your patience to get my computer up and running this evening. The one piece I would add for the 9th through 12th is 2 years ago, we added an additional course to the high school, Yoga for All. That was a result from students coming to us asking for more support, a more self-care oriented health curriculum. So that course, Yoga for All, is a hybrid course. Students can take it for both PE and health credit by doing additional projects that they helped co-create. And the health teacher at the time was very responsive to centering student feedback. And Lily's referring to the teen council members who right now are giving us feedback on what they want to see in the health course in regards to consent and healthy relationship skills. So that will, I agree with Lily, I'd be happy to share some of that out and invite some students to talk about what they're asking for.
Thank you. I think I'm gonna put a pin in this now and just try to summarize it. I think everyone on this call is on the same page that we need to do more around relationships, healthy relationships, more around trauma, informed education, more around consent. And we both seem to be further ahead than other districts and yet behind in certain areas as well. How we get there, hopefully we get there as a team. I can tell you, Deanna, you know this already. At the end of the day, it's going to be our leaders who make the decision about content, about making sure it meets all of our criteria, as Pat said, culturally responsive. They're going to pick the folks who deliver the content. They're going to have to screen the material. So although the board can be informed, as Pat said, we actually trust them. Maybe in other districts where there's not that trust, the board pushes curriculum a little further and a little faster than people might like, but we hold them accountable for providing the students, for meeting the students' needs. We know this is a need. Hopefully we will work together to get there so we continue to prioritize our kids and their needs. And right now, that's all I'm going to say, but the book that you just shared, that is your new thinking about the way a curriculum could manifest in this area. Of course, it would be valuable if you could share that with Lily and Mary and Dr. Brown so they can take a look at it. Not so much us at the moment. Maybe we'll get into it down the road. Is that fair? All right. I heard you say thank you very much, although you were muted. Next on the agenda, approval of the minutes from the last meeting, which was in November. I know that was a while ago. Pat, Nicole, do you have any thoughts about that? I scanned it and it looked pretty good from my perspective. And that was right before I went to eat turkey.
It looks fine to me.
Sure. Fine.
All right, that one's out of the way. Update on evolving committee agenda. Lily and Mary shared some information with me, which is going to be very helpful. I'll just take 30 seconds and do my spiel. This is an evolving way that we can, as a board, wrap our minds around the swift pace at which our leaders are moving us. And now we're getting into areas that we haven't explored before. And it was Nicole who brought up the essential need to get student voices involved. And I'm happy to report what I think has been happening, that student voices have been involved in everything from the decisions about curriculum to how we're implementing social emotional learning. We just heard about how they're engaged in putting information together around consent, et cetera. But we had not, as a committee, been addressing that component. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at a few other things moving forward. And you'll see some of this in the presentation we're about to see. So thanks. Take it away, Elle, Lily, and Mary.
All right, thanks. So Eldred had a great thought, really trying to synthesize our myriad focal points and bring us in a common direction. So Mary and I thought it would be helpful to do a little bit of history, a little bit of digging, and then jump right in and do some exploring as well. So I am going to share my screen. I also just popped the presentation also in the chat, so you can see that as well. So this afternoon, we thought it would be helpful to talk about our evolution, a little bit of our history, and then our collective direction. So there's been some email exchanges among the committee members that Dr. Brown and Mary and I have also been included on, which has been helpful. And so we're going to essentially present a potential framework and dive a little bit into some of the details and then plan for our next steps and our instructional rounds that'll be coming up. So back about 3 years ago or so, maybe 3.5 years ago, this was the framework for us thinking about this committee, curriculum innovations and strategic partnerships. This was right around when we transitioned from just calling it curriculum committee to curriculum innovations and strategic partnerships. And you can see this is our systems map for the school district. And we connected some of these big ideas and overarching themes to our current systems map. And then fast forward, and we've transitioned into this Learning Forward ICSD initiative, where we're taking a look at these big 4 buckets or tenets: students as partners and leaders, educator identity work, anti-racist curriculum for all, and structures of support. So everything that we're doing as a school district, we're trying to fit into this, right? Like, this is keeping us moving forward in a direction that we all believe in, right? It really speaks to our values and what we want for kids and for our wider community. Then in the fall, we presented this as a possibility of almost a systems map overhaul and looking at some big questions. And just so you know, all of these are linked in that PowerPoint, so you can click on the link if you really want to dive into this. Then this was the second page. And then Eldred and Mary and I were talking, we're like, okay, let's come up with another visual. And then I started like sketching things, and I'm embarrassed that I put this on here, but I figured I would, because things get messy, right? What we're trying to do is we're just trying to conceptualize and make clear what our focal points are. So with students in the middle, educator identity work sort of holding everything together, and social emotional learning as an overarching theme. Here are some of these big picture elements. And then we said, all right, forget it. Let's just get down to our note catcher, because as we jump in and we start to actually see teaching and learning in action and connect with kids and staff afterward, these are some of the questions that we want to explore. These are some of the big areas. So you can see we've organized it around Learning Forward ICSD, with students as leaders and partners, educator identity work, anti-racist curriculum for all, and some of the key elements of that, and structures of support. So we've organized it around that, but these are some of the key questions that we want to take a look at for the remainder of the year. And I would probably suggest into the next year as well, as we engage in instructional rounds. I'm going to pause there for just a moment and let Eldred and Mary jump in as well, because I'm sure there are some other things that you want to add in. And then we can talk about what we wanted to dive into a little bit more this afternoon.
I'll just say to my partners in crime here, Nicole and Pat, it would be important, I think, before we start going to look at what good teaching looks like in this area, that we all know what our executives mean by these things, and we all express our own expectation around these buckets. Nicole, I remember in the email exchange, you mentioned that your brilliant, beautiful daughter is not using textbooks anymore, and you didn't know that. I certainly didn't know that. So the question for us as a group is, what do we need to know? First of all, what should we expecting these things to look like? What do they mean? What will be good examples when we do begin to take our show on the road again and do visits that our schedules will allow? So the learning for me is essential. We must know what we think is excellence in these areas. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks. Mary, if you could add some thoughts, and then we'll open it up for Pat and Nicole to respond as well before we move on.
Absolutely. I really want to say that I'm inspired by students as partners in the conversations, how students are the centering of student voice and how they're responding to the curriculum, the projects, and most recently to some of our literacy initiatives and how they're talking about themselves as readers and writers. I'm excited for us to, once we have a shared understanding of what these things look like and sound like currently in our buildings, for all of us to have that privilege of hearing from kids.
I can't see either of you, Pat and Nicole, but feel free to jump in and share your thoughts.
As always, I appreciate all the work that everyone puts in on curriculum development, thoughtfulness, including student voices. I'm thinking that just one of the point that Nicole made about not knowing, how her daughter is learning, made me realize how far removed I am, because I don't even have kids coming home and doing homework anymore and seeing how they're doing them. I don't know if any of my other fellow board members attended that or administrators attended the recent NYSBA Zoom meeting on curriculum development and the board's role. And I know that a lot of that was put together in order to give board members across the state tools and talking points for some of the very difficult and often hostile conversations that are coming at school board members from across the state and across the country that happily we are not experiencing right now. And I'm grateful as always to our community for that. But one of the presenting superintendents in talking about how to keep board members informed when there are the major curricular introductions or shifts, did have a kind of like more structured approach so that that the entire board was being informed of a lot of like the structural components of new initiatives, and indeed it was regular updates to the entire board that would include a written component, like just an outline, bulleted points, or an outline that would go beyond what we're at curriculum committee, and would be broader than what the work of the curriculum committee, because the work of the curriculum committee is not just to sit here and be informed, but that actually is a role that belongs to the whole board. So did anybody else go to that? I have the luxury of working at home and being able to do things on one screen while I listen on the other screen.
I did not.
Well, I did, and I did find it, really useful. Sometimes, and I think it's partially a structure of the district. you know, we've got 12 schools, we've got a high school and an alternative school, we've got the middle schools, we've got the elementary schools. And I know that there is a plan, but sometimes it's even hard for me to just keep track of where we are by just seeing PowerPoints all the time. I just wanted to share that you know, the schedule, like, or even some information on who's making these decisions that, you know, you're very deep in the weeds and you know, well, you've got this committee and that committee and there's these teachers and these students. And that's not something I've always been able to keep up on. And I would just appreciate a little, you know, a little something in written form, even if it's just bullet points or just a summary, would just be helpful to me as we go along. And I have not talked with other board members because I never see other board members anymore except during Zoom meetings. But I don't know if other people might find that helpful as well. I just, there's so much going on, I have a little trouble following.
Nicole, are you still with us? I'm assuming so, but I still can't see you. Hop in here.
I'm here. I'm taking it all in. Thank you, Mary, Lily, and Eldred, for working on this document. I need time to process. I think some quick questions I have is how are we defining external partnerships? Is that more like working with GAC, Youth Bureau, Ithaca Village when we talk about external partnerships? Is that what that component?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm also wondering, have you all considered underneath the curriculum component adding math or STEM as we think about the fact that we detract math? How are we continuing to reevaluate to make sure that our students are thriving and getting the support that they need? And thinking about STEM in general, how are we as a district encouraging and supporting more students who are usually underrepresented in STEM, introducing them at an earlier age and having more students of color and different backgrounds going into those fields?
Let me just drop some thoughts about that last point, Nicole. So when we started this project 3 years ago, with me, at least as the leader of this group, as Lily pointed out in the earlier slide, we did have STEAM rated almost at the top. I remember Pat was being quite insistent that we not lose the excellence of math, literacy, literature, and science as we try to integrate these other, what many people call softer skills. We know they're critical, but let's face it, some people just want to focus on the 3 R's. We even added art to that, which is why it's STEAM in our world and not STEM. And you are aware of the work that Daphne's been doing from the top down and that other teachers have been doing bottom up in different ages and classes and buildings to integrate art as a holistic part of the learning experience. So I'm reasonably confident that that is integrated into all of this. We may still need to focus on it, pull it out, and make sure we don't lose it in the process of talking about these new horizons. Thank you. I am done.
So I have another question. I'm wondering, again, with external partnerships, if there are some additional questions we might want to add to that as I think about the different groups that the district partners with. Different partners have different relationships with different groups of our students. So how are we using these relationships and the knowledge that we're learning versus, you know, some students that we're not meeting their needs and they're getting their needs met other places. How are we taking that information and that data and improving our own improving the experiences that we're offering at the district. I just feel like the question for external partnership could be a bit deeper or ask the right question. I'm not sure if I'm connecting to the question that's laid out there and it being next to external partnerships.
Yeah, I think about an example of, for those who don't know, the village has a room. There's folks who work at the village who staff a room in our high school, in F building, for example, and students will spend time there, getting additional support, right? Connecting, working on academics, getting social emotional supports, etc. That's like an example of utilizing, or an external partnership. And Nicole, I think what you're saying is, in what ways do we create more of a symbiotic relationship? So we're saying like, oh, okay, hey, why are kids going to the village room in F, right? What are some of the things that you're doing specifically that then we could take back into our classrooms or into our curriculum in order to make it more meaningful, more connected, right? Whatever the students feel like they're not getting in our general classrooms, but they feel like they're getting in the village classroom. Is that kind of what you mean, Nicole? Yeah.
Yes, that was my question, Lily.
To both your points, this is huge, right? We're taking huge bites. But if you recall, the way we're going to go about it this time, hopefully is more sane for all of us, and that we're going to do it by grade blocks. So what you're seeing now, eventually we'll get to the high school, but we're starting with the little babies pre-K to 2. So we can answer all of these questions as well as we can and go see examples of excellence, and then discuss how that's going to be spread more broadly in just that block of kids. But even that's 8 schools. So we're trying to put some limits on this time and not just bounce all over the place.
So another question relating to the literacy, based on the 2 questions there, are we saying that as a district, we're now going to choose books in our classrooms from pre-K to 12th grade that hit on all 5 pursuits of Dr. Muhammad? Is that the intention?
Lily, can I start answering that and then you can add to it? Because as I read the question, the intention is that we, not necessarily in regards just to books, but the structure of the literacy block, so that there's time for targeted direct instruction in phonics and decoding. And there's also a performance component to the literacy lesson, so that students are getting to know themselves and express themselves as readers and get that identity. And that the texts, Goldie Muhammad uses this phrase, layering texts. And what I appreciate about Dr. Muhammad's layering of text is it's getting at the written word, but also visuals, audio, and to help build the students' knowledge, so that when they are looking at a written text, if that's something they're struggling with, they have the background knowledge. Sorry, I have a bit of a lag and echo in my house, so I hope you all heard that.
We did. I also should say that we're laying this out so you can see the paradigm, but my expectation is we do a much deeper dive, either in our curricular meetings or, as Pat said, maybe to the whole board in these areas. So we don't have to understand it all now, because I know I don't. We're going to do some deep dives in this, which is why I agree with Lily that our work for this version 3.0 of curriculum is definitely going to have to stand into next school year as well. But we're all going to, the goal is we will all walk away actually understanding what we mean now by good teaching in very specific classrooms with very specific groups of kids at specific age levels and grade levels.
So Mary and I had talked about diving a little more deeply, but I see we have about 10 minutes left, which is just a little glimpse into my life as a teacher, as a classroom teacher. Now you know how my classroom sometimes used to run. We would go really deep and not get to everything. But what we wanted to do was give you all some time to explore. I am actually going to just click on it now so you can take a peek at it. This allows you to just make a copy of it. And we highlighted particular curriculum components and just put some hyperlinks there for you all to click on. Our idea was that you could work in partnerships or in triads and explore, talk with each other, and make meaning for yourself around what each of these areas could really mean. So we were going to focus on anti-racist curriculum for all, project-based learning, and social emotional learning. Now, this is still available for you all, but I don't feel like we have enough time in 9 minutes to dive more deeply into this. So I'm happy to just send this out again. Maybe I could even send it for like a week or two from now, so you can just take a peek and look at it a little bit more, because we wanted to allow you a little bit of a deeper dive into some of these elements, because as we jump into classrooms and start to do instructional rounds again, we wanted you to be able to have some context and some visuals and some real world examples of what are we talking about when we're saying anti-racist curriculum in ICSD. Does that make sense? Eldred, is that okay that we're pivoting in this way?
It does make sense, but I also doubt if we have enough time to really get into it now before the regular meeting with 10 minutes ago. But I appreciate the comments of both Pat and Nicole, and I don't want to say go back to the drawing board, but what you both said, we'll be discussing that more. I mean, me and our leadership team, especially around how we can write something. A lot of this much broader strokes for the board. I'm sorry, there's a huge vehicle going by. You know, from my perspective, our committee's goal is to make sure that what our leadership is telling us they're doing is A, being done, and B, being done to standards that we expect for our kids. That's different than what Pat seems to be asking for, is a much broader sense of the general direction of the whole ship, which is something that we don't often get as a group. And I think we can all appreciate that. We just don't get it. So we need to discuss that a little more and figure out if there's a elegant way to make that happen without driving people crazy. I do also want to reiterate one more time that it's important that the things we see now over the next, whatever the time paradigm is, are focused on what we're doing with the kiddos pre-K through 2, right? So don't expect to see what's happening in 10th grade, because that's not where we're going first. So Lily and Mary, maybe we talk some more, and we make sure that when we get together next as a committee, that these deep dives are going exactly where we need them to go in terms of that age cohort. Make sense, folks?
Eldred, can I make a request? I was hoping that at a future meeting, we would be able to invite Lynn to talk to us about the report card. I've heard from some teachers, just discussion of feeling disconnected from the report card. So when talking to parents during parent-teacher conference, them not feeling like that the new report card is reflective of what kids are doing in the classroom. So just having sat through my own, I know that my kids' teacher had a hard time not talking to me about what my children were doing, but putting a number or a value next to their name in connection to what the report card says now. So I would love if Lynn would be able to just talk to us about how she's rethought the report card and its connection to curriculum, because as we're talking about curriculum, I think that it needs to be aligned. Your vision needs to be aligned with how we are evaluating and creating metrics for students.
I think that makes a lot of logical sense. And also, it's my vision that we have leaders from our partnership groups come and talk to us as well about what they're seeing on the ground, right? We could have the best intentions and we could be either spending a lot of money on partnerships or supporting partnerships or be deeply engaged with some of our significant partners. And they are seeing things that we cannot with our kiddos that may not be going as well as we project them to be. So all the groups we mentioned, they're going to be invited to this table to talk to us. What are folks at the village seeing with some of our most vulnerable kids? What are people at other groups who work with our youngest students seeing when they're engaging with them, regardless of whether or not it's social emotional learning or just straight academic subjects? So yeah, I think the even in the support system documentation in this little presentation, the equity report card is listed almost, I think, if I remember correctly, it's the #1 priority.
Could I just ask a quick question, Nicole? Are you talking about the equity report card or the report cards themselves changed?
The report cards themselves changed since the pandemic.
I would love to know more about that. And if I apologize if I missed it, but thank you.
Well, thanks
Yeah,
for clearing that up.
You wouldn't have known, Pat, unless kid came home with a report card for you to look at. So it's not something just unless we should have mailed you a report card.
Well, no, I mean, it's nice when board members know what kind of documentation all the families are getting, like little nuts and bolt things like that. Helps me to conceptualize. So thanks for that.
So it sounds like some of our next steps will be around scheduling those instructional rounds for pre-K2, scheduling a time for Lynn and some others to come and give us an overview of the report card and the ways in which it connects to the curriculum work. I also hear that we're going to make some changes to that note catcher and that document some of those questions around external partnerships and a way to ensure that we don't lose science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. And I'm also hearing some bigger picture, general who and how information is going to be key. Those are the notes that I'm taking in terms of next steps. Is there anything I'm missing?
Those match notes that I've been jotting down.
Well, if you don't mind, I think my mini me would like to say hello to everyone and really get out there.
Hi.
It's Ivy.
Hi, Ivy. How are you?
Thank you for indulging us.
She is what this is all about, right? So
I think all of our curriculum meetings should have kiddos at them. I mean, but the last thing I'll say is that Dr. Brown is being lauded for this work, leading forward for what we're trying to do here all around the country. So there's an article about what we're doing in Central New York School Board Association. But we need to keep in mind that we have to, as board members and as members of this curriculum committee, understand it. If we don't understand what's happening, it's going to be hard for us to suggest improvements, and we're pretty damn good at that. There's trust between us and our administrators. We're not trying to throw each other down the stairs anymore. We're trying to build towards something, and I hope that this is one way we can get at a more understanding.
And with that, I think we should bring this lovely August meeting to a close so we can jump on the next call and have our important yet brief school board meeting.
See you in a minute.
All right, guys, thanks.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.